Hi everyone! Goddess of Radical Self-Love. This is our last coloring cleanse for the first memoir, The Snake That Never Sheds. We've had quite a little journey, wouldn't you say? I am just so grateful for you all. I'm so grateful that I was given these experiences and lessons in life. And for me to be able to say that, it's really profound for myself. It makes me really understand what a huge role that I can play in helping and assisting others find their true self, their love for themselves. It's been like the most amazing journey in the last, I guess, when did we start? August? And it's mid-February now. So yeah, I've just grown so much as a person and as a human being. So I just want to say how grateful I am to all of you for sharing this with me. And of course, helping to reach others who need to hear this, who need to hear the journey. Like I've said before, if I can go through this, if I could have walked this journey and made it through on this other side, to find really and fall in love with myself. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's almost like that was the whole point. I am so grateful. Thank you. Grateful and humbled. Yeah. So, coloring cleanse, Miss and Mr. MECAs. So take them out if you have them printed out to help release any blockages for Lonnie. And it doesn't matter like what time space you ever find this in, because, well, time is not linear. So no matter when you're doing it, whether it's for her or for yourselves or both, there's nothing but blockages set free. Let go, letting go of the pain, letting go of the suffering for each and every one of us as we go through our coloring cleanse. Yes, I'm like crying already. I haven't even started. Sorry. Yeah. Obviously, this chapter was a pinnacle, like the chapter says. I know we go through them all the time, many times throughout our lives, but, to be given the gift of a child with extreme chronic illness and disabilities. It was really hard for me to understand for a long time. And to be able to one day now say that I'm grateful for the lessons. Obviously not the pain that my daughter endured, but the pain and suffering I did. And how it helped mold me as the person I am. To find really that love within the lessons. I mean, courage and strength so many times. Having to release control to a greater power. Having to learn that. That's definitely a lot of gifts. So, hopefully I won't cry the entire time. So, yes, I did change it on the actual outline. I'm working on the edit right now. I think I'm on 8. So, we have halfway through the edit for the full printout edition of the book. So, it will have everything updated, like spell checks. All the additions and edits that I made with you guys will be in there. So I know that we didn't keep on re-editing and updating as the Conscious Queen, Orion, posted them on Patreon. So it should be done within like the next week. So if you guys want to print it out at any point and share it, yeah, until we find an editor or a publishing company. So, or you can just leave it everybody to the site too. So eventually we'll have like a helpline up and everything. So as we add to the grid of experts. So, yes. So it was June 28th, 1997, 2 days before my 20th birthday. I woke up to birds chirping out of my window of the parents' home. The parents had planned to bring... I don't know why my music keeps going off. Like somebody keeps unplugging my speaker and it's driving me crazy. 2 days before, okay, sorry. The parents had planned to bring Orion to the grandmother's for a weekend. I just need to stop this and plug it in quick. Sorry, I'm pausing you. Well, I guess I'm going to have to put these 2 videos together since somehow I forgot that I just hit the pause button to keep on going on it. So, sorry about that. So, I forgot to say we're listening to, why I always forget this is ridiculous, Spotify. And it's under Leilani Madden, not the Goddess of Radical Self-Love, which I'm going to change since I keep on telling everybody what it's on, and it's not even right, but it's Dream Big, Leilani Madden, yeah. The parents had planned to bring Orion to the grandparents for the weekend, so we needed to be home so I could pack her things and give her kisses goodbye. She wasn't all smiles that morning as she had gotten her immunizations the day prior, but still never cried. Orion again got super baby marks from the doctor as she was so advanced for her 6-month age, already standing and trying to walk around her playpen, which I actually have pictures of. Well, somebody has them, but there are actual pictures so you could see that she was actually a very healthy, happy baby. Yeah. ST and I would be meeting them at the grandmother's in the evening. We had planned to spend the day at Valley Fair and amusement park for my birthday gift. My younger cousin, MW, had flown in from Washington the night before, so the parents would also be bringing her with. I remember that morning so well. There was just something so different in the birds' songs. It was as if the rest of the world had stopped for a few moments, just so I could bear witness. Everything so at peace. Almost too peaceful, where I took notice. Something just didn't seem right about this day. There had been several premonition scenarios in my past as a child, so I should have recognized the silence felt. The pretense of silence falling upon me, and what was following typically included something ominous about to occur. Someone would be getting injured. The first at age 4, when I cried to the parents not to send us to daycare, that something bad was going to happen to my youngest sister, TA. They sent us anyway, and she had her little pinky cut off in a dog cage that day. I suppose I should say finger, huh? The events were so sporadically spaced that I didn't connect the dots until this specific day, but only after I had sent my daughter off with the parents without warning. You know, and the thing is, I had so many higher self moments, or, you know, the universe trying to speak to me, but it's like, again, was it a warning or was it just for this moment? You know, it's interesting because I remember this one that included the mother. We were getting ready to go riding horse, and the same silence, the same everything happened. I didn't hear birds chirping. It's just, there's a different tone or energy that like comes over for the premonition. It's like an electric feeling, a whisper. But this time, when we were going to go ride horse, it was like, I right out told her, don't go. You know, somebody's going to get hurt. Like, I know it. It was really sad because, well, she got thrown from the horse Flicka. We were riding next to the road we lived on, and people would fly down this road. I mean, but we were in the ditches, and some of our horses were not as broke as others, and I had still been working with Flicka, which was my mom's horse, but she really did not ride very often, and she was more of my game horse, like my barrel riding horse, so I wasn't really excited for her to be on her. I would have rather her been on like an older horse, like our horse Sundance, who's my sister's horse, but she got thrown and had some major issues happen, like she was in the hospital. So, and I believe after that they got rid of her, which made no sense to me because I had gotten thrown off of my horse before and literally broke my leg, and we didn't get rid of my horse. I mean, it was like ridiculous. I was super, super upset because I really loved that horse. But as you guys know from the past, that when I left the house, the parents got rid of all the horses to the glue factory. So, or the dog food factory, whatever it was. Yeah. So I'd have these premonitions And sometimes I'd know right away what was going to happen. Sometimes I wouldn't. But it would always included somebody being hurt. So, yeah. I eased my worries by telling myself I would see her again in just a few short hours. When I have a silence premonition again, I will for surely let you know. Meaning my friends or whoever I'm going to be spending time with, or definitely my family. Dreams too. But I mean, like, this whole thing with me doing MECA and trusting and believing, all of this is all part of it. It's all being like a conduit. We all are the same. We all are conduits. We all hear messages. It's just some people just listen better. And I think because I was alone for so long, I really did rely on my higher self to help me. Even if I thought I was talking to myself for some reason, which, you know, I think people have that. I remember, like, even watching, like, The Mother, and we would make fun of her, my sisters and I, like, she's talking to herself again. Well, she was talking to someone, and believe me, like, it can be a higher self, or it can be somebody's demons. So the screaming and whatnot is like, she was listening to something, and what she was listening to was not good. So, I kind of had this thing where it's like, well, I was told this. Basically, if it's positive, if it's not that, a warning is positive. It's a warning. But if it's anything having to do with you personally being not good enough in any way, this is just like social programming, like things from your past that you have been hearing or witness to. It can be from so many different sources: family, friends, your educators, your social media, media in general, anything that's comparing you and telling you you're not measuring up. Those are voices not to listen to. And the more you listen to your higher self, your guides supporting you, the weaker and quieter those voices become until they're practically non-existent. But it is a daily practice to make sure you're understanding which is which. Let's go on. After they had all left, I went to go pick up ST. I told him about my feeling and the birds' songs of silence. He assured me everything would be fine, and we were off to Valley Fair. It was kind of a big deal for me to be able to go there again. It's a place of some of my happiest childhood memories, although it was a bit expensive, so I hadn't been back in years. Actually, not since I was 12, which I went there with a couple of my friends, and on the way, got my ears pierced, like a double, the second hole or something, and that was not very smart to do when you're going on roller coasters being like bounce back and forth. With the $60 entrance fee, we entered the gates for some childlike fun. And we used to go there a lot for like my parents' work picnics when we lived in Minnesota. So, yes, I like to go there still with my children. because I'm kind of a big kid, so I love roller coasters. Yes, I do. We were there for about a half hour finding a locker and grabbing a quick snack. Within the time span of some 10 minutes, while we were deciding where to start, the blue sky turned black and a heavy downpour pushed us to seek cover immediately. It was actually so crazy. If I could see the whole scene playing out, it's definitely like a movie because we had just gotten there, paid all this money, put our stuff away. We're standing around going, and we actually had seen somebody my ST knew. So we had like been standing there with them, and all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, look at those clouds coming. Look how black they are. And then it just got super stupid windy. And torrential downpour just out of the blue. So it just like engulfed the entire sky. As we stood under a rooftop in the tumultuous rainfall, a consuming feeling of desperation and despair took over my body. It was 2 p.m. when I turned to ST, quivering lips, tears seeping down my face. He grabbed my arms and told me the rain would soon end. It's like he really thought I was crying because of the rain. So funny. No, not the rain. I wasn't concerned with the rain. I told him it's them, my baby. They were just in a car accident. It's them, my baby. They were just in a car accident. Like hyperventilating, saying it, like trying to get the words out. For some reason, he just knew to get me out of there and not argue. I didn't only see it, I felt it. I felt what happened. And I was like right there with them. So ST helped me back to the car since I could no longer feel the earth beneath my feet. Because I wasn't even there. I was with my baby. I was with my family in that accident. I was there. So basically what I'm trying to say is if people really think that this kind of stuff isn't true, like that there's no, anything beyond this, that we're just humans and, we're animals, then how is any of this possible? That's what I would like to know. What are their explanations on premonitions? Unless they just don't buy it, unless they just don't believe it. But then how would I know? How would I be able to tell, ST what had happened? How would I have known any of this? Why would we have left Valley Fair then? If it wasn't true, if what I was saying wasn't true, why would we have paid $60, left Valley Fair, gone to the parents' house, 30 miles away, 20 miles away, whatever, walk in the door, and within 20 minutes, we were at the parents' home. As I ran through the basement door towards the phone, it was already ringing. I took a deep breath as I put the receiver to my ear. Hello, I answered. This is Polk County Sheriff's Department. With whom am I speaking? Leilani Madden, already knowing what he was about to tell me, because I saw it. I was there. Are you the daughter of LM and WM? Yes. Ma'am, your family were just in a car accident. They are at the St. Croix Falls Hospital, and you need to get there as soon as possible. Which, again, they even went to the hospital. They got in a car accident in the same city that we had lived in all this time, on a bridge we had passed over. I don't know how many times we could have possibly gone over that bridge in that many years. We went there all the time, and Highway 8, like the entire road from Minnesota through Wisconsin, is well known as a road of fatal injuries. And the fact that it happened right in the same town, just all of it, they have to be lessons. That's all I'm saying. What about my daughter, the baby? Because it was like, once they were there, I couldn't tell how anybody was. It was like I was watching, saw it, was in it, felt it, and then started moving again. So I couldn't be there in the car with them the entire time. Maybe if I had stayed in that zone at the amusement park, then maybe I would have known how everyone was. But as soon as I saw it, I had to tell ST and go. And like I said, I am not, I'm not going to say I'm not special or gifted, because we're all gifted in different ways. This is just one of mine, you know, and I had to go through a lot in my life to receive this gift, you know. So I am very grateful for this gift. However, now I am able to utilize it in a much more productive way by helping others, right? Ma'am, I can't discuss any details over the phone. Just understand it's critical. You need to get here as soon as possible. I dropped the phone and fell to the floor. ST ran in during the short call and had already started making a plan to call his mother for help driving my sisters and us, since I was so hysterical. He picked me up and carried me to the car. Even then, I'm wondering, like, I know, like, I'm wondering why we didn't just go right away, but at the same time, like, I knew where MC was, so it was easy to just go and get her, but to go through all of this while they're, who knows if they're okay or not. I mean, I'm surprised that I even made those kind of decisions, what was best for them, what I would have wanted for my sisters, you know, if I was in their shoes. Yeah. He picked me up and carried me to the car. We headed towards Burger King where MC was working. I soon took over the mothering position with her. We met up with ST's mother so she could drive and ST would be able to comfort us on the hour-long drive. But first, we had one big obstacle standing in the way of me knowing if my baby was okay. We had no idea how to find our sister TA. She had gone on some 2-week church mission with a couple of her friends and had returned at noon that day. However, we had no idea which church it was. It was crazy. We just kept stopping at random churches, for real, to see if they knew what church had just gone on a mission trip. I don't know why we thought all the churches would be in touch with each other, like, over and over, entering their larger-than-life side-by-side cathedral doors with the look of devastation in my eyes with no luck. Finally, MC remembered where one of the girls lived TA went on the trip with. Her brother made a quick map, and again, we were off. The church was in a not-so-nearby city, meaning we had to spend more time to get there again, leaving who knows what is going on with all of them happening without us there or knowing. I mean, What if there was only minutes to say goodbye? I don't know. From the multiple buses, rows of cars, and a sign that read, "Welcome home," we knew she was in there. As I busted through the final doors, tears falling to the sacred floors, strangers jumped to their feet to hold me from having mine fall out from under me once again. Isn't it kind of amazing how much, like, how people we don't even know at times can, like, be there for us? Yeah, that's happened to me quite a few times in my life. Sometimes more than people I actually knew. Actually, a lot of times more than people I actually knew, sadly. When everyone stood and turned to see where the gut-wrenching cries were coming from, TA, in a dreamlike state, eyes finally met mine in disbelief. She stood there in front of me, lips moving, yet I heard nothing. Unable to speak or breathe, I grabbed her hand and made her follow me to the car. She was not happy when she first saw me because she just thought I was, I don't know what she thought I was, but she was embarrassed. I mean, I probably would have been too if I didn't know what had happened, so. PMST's mother explained everything as 2, then 3 shrills in unison engulfed the car for an hour. I'm going to pause it for a second because the boys are coming in. All right. All I could ever get out was, "My baby, my baby. Why, God, please don't take my baby, please." Over and over and over. It was like just coming out of me where I couldn't fathom what was happening. And yeah, when we finally made it to the doors of the emergency room, which were all too familiar to me as an accident-prone child, I heard for the first time Orion's cries. Like, I never remember hearing them ever. But I knew it was her. So, like, right when we went through the emergency room doors, there's, like, a desk and everything, and then there's more doors. I already knew where to go because I had been there so many times. And I heard her, and I just, like, didn't ask any questions, just ran right through to her. Without any hesitation, I ran straight to her and scooped her up in my arms without having a care in the world except comforting her. That is until the doctor brought us back to see the others. The mother lay there on a hospital gurney, black and blue from head to toe. Shards of glass covered her entire body. Crying out in pain, she asked about the father. As I held her burnt hands, a nurse brought the father's belongings to ST, which was really actually kind of scary because we didn't know how he was or what was going on. And then all of a sudden somebody just brings medical staff brings belongings in. We definitely thought the worst right away. So, because she didn't talk right away, that was an interesting moment as well. She explained the father had to be transported to St. Paul and was in critical condition. We actually had passed his ambulance on the way to St. Croix, which I already kind of felt like I knew when we passed it. I can't remember if I even said it out loud. I kind of think I did. His entire right side of his body was crushed, and they didn't know if he would make it or not. My cousin lay on the other side of the room, desperate to see her parents, which were already in flight and would be to the hospital soon. The physicians couldn't figure out why she couldn't keep any food down for 2 weeks when they finally realized her small intestine had been ripped from her stomach from her seatbelt and the impact of the accident. That tells you how great of an impact it really was. The doctors explained how if anyone hadn't been wearing their seatbelts in that car, they surely wouldn't have made it. And why I always make sure everyone is wearing their seatbelts when they ride with me. Plus, I had fallen out of a car when I was little, remember? So, luckily, I had insisted on Orion always being buckled in her car seat, which the parents didn't agree with. None of their children had been, and we were all just fine. Just weeks earlier, we had gotten into an argument while I was nursing. I can't remember where we were going. Maybe church or something. I explained they had to stop and pull over. I refused to take her out, even if it was for 15 minutes. I'm going to say out of her car seat. Yeah, they were like, did not want to waste the time. And I'm quite sure that if I wouldn't have been so, well, insistent, they would have been driving around with her not in a seatbelt. So, I mean, I'm sure lots of people understand that in my childhood and others who are my age or older, that seatbelts were not a priority. So, I mean, I really don't remember ever wearing one until I fell out of the car when I was little, so. The mother, in and out of consciousness, tried to explain what had happened. We knew so far that a vehicle on the opposite side of the highway hydroplaned into their lane on the bridge, and there wasn't any time or space for the father to do anything. We needed to go and be with the father. I made sure it was all right if we left with Orion. The doctors assured us she was perfectly okay, even though she still hadn't stopped crying. I figured she was still in shock. Getting away from the hospital and all these strangers would ease her suffering. They explained they had taken multiple x-rays and there were no signs of injury. We made our way to the newly built Walmart for a new car seat, then set out to St. Paul to be with the father. We decided to have PM drop us off at my vehicle since Orion still hadn't stopped crying and PM could take her home to her place and try to calm her. Her crying was just consistent, and I definitely had no idea how to help her. I mean, there was nothing I could do to get her to stop crying. Nothing. And she wouldn't eat. So, and her, she wasn't going to the bathroom because she wouldn't eat. So it wasn't like a dirty diaper ever. So all the things you would normally try, just none of it worked. When we finally made it to the father, we learned it would be a long wait. He was already underway in multiple surgeries. After hours of anticipation over whether or not we would ever be able to hear his voice again, we entered his recovery room. Quite shocking, his head was larger than a basketball, and he could barely open his eyes. Through the small slits in his eyelids, all you could see were red like fire round globes. I mean, you could not see an eyeball. It was just pure red. His body was strung up in all different directions. I couldn't even touch him, let alone believe my eyes. I told him how much I loved him and that the mother, MW, and the baby were all okay. I blew him a kiss and left him to rest. Yeah, I doubt that he even would remember people showing up to see him in that hospital. He was not really coherent until he went to the other hospital, and I was like always with Ryan most of the time, so it's like everybody else had to just see them, and they had to just take care of themselves and heal on their own. ST and I were exhausted and couldn't wait to have I couldn't wait to have my baby in my arms once again. ST called his mother to let her know how the father was and that we were on our way back. She explained to him that there was something very wrong with Orion and we needed to bring her to the hospital right away. We left immediately and drove under the starlit sky. As we pushed through PM's front door, we heard the same echoing cries as when we entered through the hospital doors a little over 12 hours earlier. PM told us Orion had a 107-degree temperature and hives covering her entire body. We left for the nearest hospital. When we explained everything that she had just been through, they just gave her some Tylenol and x-rays, a broken collarbone, and a splint. That's what they found. 6 hours later, we took her home and got a few short hours of much-needed rest. It was like every single hospital we went into, like, they didn't even take this accident into consideration. It was so frustrating. Trying to explain how bad everyone was and that she hadn't stopped crying yet. It's like nobody was putting the pieces together the way that I was, or they just didn't want to hear it or something. I don't know. It just didn't make any sense to me at all. How you could have a family in there saying what had just happened and not take it into consideration. Like, I really want to get all the notes from all these hospitals and read what they say about it, because I kind of felt like it was a conspiracy, to be honest. Like, why do they not want to hear what I'm saying? The next day I awoke for the very first time from my child's cries. As I tried to comfort her, nothing seemed to work. The more she cried, the higher her temperature would get, the more red welts would appear. I called the emergency room and they told me to just keep giving her Tylenol. Finally, after hours, she cried herself to sleep out of pure exhaustion. We had to make another trip back to see the father, with him still in critical condition. Yeah, and on the way this time was really scary because it was raining and ST was driving. Orion was in the car and the car hydroplaned in the middle of the freeway and did like multiple shitties or 360s, whatever, in the middle of the freeway with semi-trucks all around us. And we ended up going backwards up an on-ramp. And then we just realized we were fine and just kept going to the hospital after that. The weirdest time. We only stayed a short while since he was still resting. Then we headed back to see the mother and my cousin again. They both looked better than yesterday since they had been cleaned up a lot. Although now I could see much more of the mother's injuries. She explained during the accident the car had started on fire and her legs were caught in the engine. She told us her and MW kept screaming, "We're all going to die," as the father was drifting in and out of consciousness. And all I can imagine is, so it was like, here's the van, the father, the mother. I believe that my cousin was sitting behind the father. That obviously took the biggest. We have pictures too. I need to find all this stuff, but I don't know if somebody will give them back to me. I'm going to assume they will eventually. And then the baby in the middle, Orion. And so when they hit the other car, the entire front side of the van got pushed up. So it literally was as small as, like, I wanted to say a metro, but nobody's going to know what that is. Well, we could say a spark now. So the baby ended up being lodged in the middle of both, the car seat did, of both the passenger, or the driver and passenger seat of the front, and there was glass like all over the car seat. And so she's sitting in between the grandfather, or the father, and the mother, and the mother and cousin are both screaming that they're going to die, and who knows what was going on with the father besides, or if he was saying anything. But at 6 months old, I'm sure that she could have, at least she would have understood that this was a threatening position to be in, extremely life-threatening position to be in, especially with the car on fire and all the screaming going on. So yeah, that's how I kind of see it from her eyes. As the father was drifting in and out of consciousness, firemen eventually arrived and cut them out of the van. So they had to cut the van all apart to get them out. As I was speaking with her, a couple of police officers came into the room with more details from the accident. One of the officers explained to us, when my family traveling eastbound on Highway 8 over a small and narrow bridge, T-boned another car traveling at high speeds westbound. The other vehicle had been accelerating past multiple vehicles, weaving in and out of traffic on the 2-lane highway. So obviously we know all this information from other drivers who had stopped. Once they saw that same vehicle that scared them had gotten in an accident, there was quite a few people, witnesses to how they had seen it play out before they even reached my family. Because of the rain, although I do know that some people are very upset about the situation because their family members were the ones who were fatally injured, and tried to blame my family, I guess. I think there's more than enough information to come to the conclusion that there was nothing that the father could have done to stop it, and obviously would have if he could have. Because of the rain, the father's approximate speed was 40 miles an hour. I mean, he drove really slow anyway. While the westbound driver was reaching speeds near 70 miles an hour. His car hydroplaned, and without any time to react, the two vehicles collided. The front of the family's vehicle into the passenger door of the oncoming vehicle. The passenger, a female in her 40s, held the keys to the ignition in her hand as she was thrown out of the vehicle, fatally landing on the highway's wet pavement. The driver was also fatally injured at the scene as well. They had just left the bar some 30 minutes prior. So the passenger was trying to stop the driver. So I don't know what was going on in the car, if there was a fight, or, she was just scared, because as the other witnesses talked about, I'm sure she was scared. Why else would she have the keys to the ignition in her hand? And I don't know why that would have been what she was trying to do, or if that even was why they ended up on the other side of road, if that's why they hydroplaned. I had never even thought of that before, but she was trying to stop him anyway. So nobody will probably ever know what had obviously been going on in that car prior to this happening. So after the officers had left, we let the mother know how the father was doing. Our visit was short as Orion started projectile vomiting and spiked a fever once again. When I say projectile vomiting, it was like out of a horror movie. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. I didn't even know babies could do that, or people in general. It was like, but it was something that I ended up getting very used to, and anybody who was around us had to bear witness as well, because it was just ended up being part of her disease when it wasn't under any type of control, and she never has gone into remission. So I don't want to talk about it too much, but obviously you can watch any of our MECA stuff and you'll see that she still deals with her diagnosis today. This was just the beginning of a long road, a lifelong road ahead of her. On our way home, ST and I decided to try a different hospital on the way through St. Paul. Orion's cries had gotten so intense I ran through the doors with her. Again, we explained the entire scenario. They did a spinal tap, which showed nothing. Once they got her fever under control, they sent us home. The next morning, again woken by the sounds of my daughter's cries, I decided no one would be sending us home until I had some solid answers. I mean, yeah. I was not going to deal with somebody telling me to just give my daughter Tylenol again. I was exhausted by this point, and I was pretty fed up, so I called the Burnsville Clinic and explained our situation. We were guided to an amazing pediatrician, Dr. K, who would walk this walk with us for the next decade. He was, by all accounts, a gift from the universe. He was definitely, for a parent, I've heard other parents complain about him. I mean, so I guess each situation is different, but for me, he was definitely my cheerleader. You know, I could just make a phone call and he'd change his entire schedule around. He'd come and see us if we were at a different hospital. I mean, he really, really cared. It wasn't like he was just like doing a job. So with all the details on Orion's symptoms, he took a wild guess at the possibility of Kawasaki's disease or syndrome. Dr. K explained there was a treatment she needed, which would include a week-long stay in the hospital. My first of many long overnighters on a hospital room chair/bench, which most of the time I slept in her bed, but because she was most comfortable when she wasn't in my arms. So it's amazing how quickly we can adapt to new living conditions when we learn how precious our human fragile state really is. I would have done just about anything to make sure she was okay. Day and night for a week, holding her sickened body in my arms and praying for her to recover, to have the little happy ball of joy I had grown so accustomed to come back to me. And then 2 weeks, as the first and now the second treatment didn't take, we had the realization her diagnosis was not Kawasaki's disease. That would have been much simpler if it would have been, because she would have been better. Dr. K had no clue as to how to help Orion, so we transferred her up to Children's in Minneapolis. Nothing about that experience was positive, and I'm not talking about Children's. I'm sure it's perfectly great. I don't really remember it a ton, but I do remember the doctor we had was not a good doctor or a specialist. Sorry, but that is just the way it is sometimes, and when you figure it out, you better cut them out. Just because somebody has a degree or whatever doesn't mean that they're going to work right with you or your family. So, yeah, if it doesn't feel right, keep looking. Every day they ran tests to get a diagnosis. Every day, no answers. I was so angry. How could they not know what was wrong with my baby? Weren't these trained professionals? Not only could they not find a diagnosis, but nothing they did seemed to ease her suffering. She was just in a major car accident, people. There has to be something you can find. 2 people were dead. The father was still hanging on by a thread. The mother and cousin were also recovering in the hospital. Everyone was physically injured, and the diagnoses were quite clear. But Orion, she's the only one who has no real injuries, they are telling me, but she couldn't move her body at all. She was just standing and starting to walk a few short weeks ago. Her crying only succeeded to pure exhaustion. She vomited more than she was taking in. Her body became consumed by red raised welts. Her temperature was never under 104 and would fluctuate up to 107. Each day she was getting worse, not better. Each night I laid by her side begging for answers and her recovery. Obviously, this was all from the accident, and we were working with a bunch of morons. Sorry, but it really did seem quite clear. Anybody who didn't have a degree was like, what do you mean they can't find anything? How does that make any sense? It's from the accident. Everybody knew it. But no doctors wanted to hear it. Even nurses would say it too. So it was just like the specialist, the physicians. They're the ones who didn't want to hear it because they couldn't find scientific evidence. Which I love. I love to have evidence, like, believe me. But now since the whole trusting and believing thing has taken place, it's like, all right, I get evidence all the time. Sometimes you just have to trust and believe, and the evidence appears. Yep. A couple weeks into her stay, I left for a few hours to go visit the father with ST. They had moved him into a rehab nursing care unit. He had just suffered a mild stroke during the night. Sorry. He was coherent when we arrived. I figured I'd better ask now, just in case he didn't make it, really, if it would be okay if ST moved in with us since the mother had just come home. We definitely would be needing the help since I was always at the hospital with Orion. Because she needed help. The mother did. I mean, she couldn't really do much of anything, so she needed help mowing the lawn, cleaning, going and getting groceries, driving, anything she needed help. The father agreed as long as we were engaged because he didn't want it to look bad to the siblings, I get it. At this point, I was already 4 months pregnant and no one knew, so I thought it was no big deal. On the way back to the hospital, ST and I stopped at the Mall of America. I'm already getting knowing this part of it. It's like, you know, users be users. How else would I say it? I don't know. It's like, yes, signs are everywhere. Signs, signs everywhere, signs. Like, do not proceed forward. You know, pay attention to the signs. But I know back then I didn't feel like I could do it on my own either, so I had to believe in somebody else over myself. I second guessed myself all the time, so you know, I understand where my mind was at, but I see that I still did know what was going on. I did see the manipulation. I did see it in lots of people, and I did point it out a lot, but I didn't trust myself enough to walk and roll away Wednesdays. Walk away from what no longer serves you. Couldn't do it then. Now, bye. On the way back to the hospital, ST and I stopped at the Mall of America. I filled out the credit check for my own engagement ring. Just like that, I picked out my own ring and paid for it all in one shot. How romantic. Not that I cared whatsoever at the time. I didn't. I just wanted to get it over with and get out of there and get back to my baby. Although on the way out, ST wanted to stop by one more store. He said just in case I saw something I liked better. I was a bit annoyed, wanting to just get back to Orion. Shocking as it may seem, he picked out a ring for himself and told me if I was wearing one, he needed to wear one also. Yeah, it's kind of like this thing, I think, that ended up like happening in a lot of my relationships. This kind of almost weird jealousy and thing with the guys where it was like, not like they wanted to make sure I was happy. I was always trying to make sure they're happy and taken care of, but they're still trying to make sure they're happy and taken care of too. So it's like double duty for them. Whereas I was just like taking care of everybody and not taking care of myself. And nobody else was going to be taking care of me either. So, yeah, pretty much that's how all my relationships ended up being. So, how can I please you instead of how can we please each other? How can we please ourselves and meet in the middle, you know? Which is how I work now. I'm going to please me. And yes, hopefully we can meet in the middle when we're both giving each other our self-care. Yes, it's not, I mean, you can please me if you want to, and I can please you if I want to, but only after we've pleased ourselves with self-care and self-love. Like, no more energy suckers are allowed. Friends, boyfriends, families. Yep. It's like that. With my 2 new credit cards and our rings, ST proposed to me in the parking ramp of MOA with the ring I had just purchased while carrying his child. See, it's like not trying to take care of us, having me take care of us. I did insist on him being on one knee, which is a bit ironic. I should have been on my own knee proposing to myself. That night, ST moved himself in and traded rooms with the parents while I stayed with my baby girl suffering in the hospital. ST returned the parents' things to their upstairs room so we could have the entire basement and not wake the sisters with a crying baby at night if and when Orion would ever come home. That week, we also told everyone I was pregnant. Nobody seemed shocked. Actually, they were all quite excited, as it seemed everyone was looking for something positive. To shine a light on all this trauma. To shine a light over all this trauma. Yeah, over, not on. For 4 months, Orion was at Children's Hospital before they came up with a diagnosis, systemic juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. The short explanation, arthritis consumes the entire body, joints, and organs. So every part of your body, right? The skin, your eyes, your brain, your heart, your lungs, your joints. It's consumed by it. So you can have all types of symptoms, and yeah, it's pretty devastating. Kids get arthritis too. It was a bit easier to diagnose as they found fluid around her heart and lungs, and the skin rash was a clear giveaway when combined with the rest. The doctors said it had nothing to do with the car accident, which even today I feel is a bunch of crap. My personal hypothesis. She had received immunizations a day prior, so your body's already in a weakened state, right? The car accident brought on a state of trauma and stress, which in combination triggered latent DNA cells, which may or may not have ever been triggered or activated throughout her life. But what do I know? I'm only her mother. I have actually talked to other people who had a diagnosis of systemic JRA after a car accident. Back then, they didn't, I don't know if they even outright say, even now, if the same thing were to happen, if they would say, yes, it was caused or triggered to the point where you could, you know, have some type of, so like at the car accident, right? There was like $1 million balloon policy that was never, or umbrella policy, whatever, not balloon, that was on the driver's insurance that never got used. And if they would have said, yes, this accident triggered this chronic illness in this infant, we might have been able to set her up, you know, a account for her to be able to have support for the rest of her life, financial support from the injuries. But basically how they do things with infants or children is this, if you don't know. If somebody's in a car accident, let's say right now I'm in a car accident, right? They look at how much you're worth, how much you get by the loss of income. So if you make $1 million a year, you're going to get a nice settlement, right? But if you only make $20,000 a year, you're not going to get as nice of a settlement. Even, I mean, if it's the exact same injuries. So with children, they look at children as being expenses, right? They're not producing. They don't know how much they will produce, but right now they're actually an expense. So a child who dies in a car accident actually relieves the parents of an expense. I'm just saying that's how it is. I'm not saying it's right. Dr. M put her on a cupboard full of medications, many of which I had to sign releases for since they were only in experimental stages, which happened throughout her entire life. Every single drug that you've ever heard of today that's on the market, she tried before you did. She was the guinea pig when she was an infant for all the medications people use today. The one that had the most control over regulating her temperature was prednisone, a steroid, but in extremely high doses. With the amount she was taking, she turned into a little zombie, blew up like a balloon, and still was unable to move. Her cheeks became so swollen and round they actually began to crack. So much that you could see every surface vein sitting there on her red and delicate skin. Like her cheeks would actually crack. It was so sad. I mean, they just like a little chipmunk. Her entire body. It's like so much water weight, you know, and it's like even now it's like so much water weight from all the IV treatment she has constantly, you know. It's so unfair in that way. But I know who she is. She's Buddha. She's the conscious queen. Orion went from a baby that would never stop smiling to expressionless or always in tears. I couldn't stand seeing her this way and took her back to Dr. K again. I told him I didn't like how her treatment was going. This isn't a life anyone deserves. It's not a life at all. I told him at this rate I was ready to move her from all the medications and to remove her from all the medications and find someone who really knew what they were doing. Dr. K calmed my nerves and set up an appointment at Gillette St. Paul with a very well-known and respected rheumatologist, Dr. R.V. He had a full schedule, but his partner could see her the next day. Dr. L was young and almost didn't look qualified to handle my baby. But his demeanor changed my mind as he took all the time needed to address all my questions about systemic JRA, now systemic JIA, juvenile idiopathic arthritis, and treatments for it. The reason I'm going on saying all this too, just for your information, is how important it is to find a physician, a specialist, who is going to take the time to really educate you and listen to you, because they're being educated as well. Orion's type of arthritis is the rarest type, and she weighed heavily on the most critical side of the Bell scale, which means her diagnosis could actually be fatal and disfiguring if not treated properly. Dr. L agreed. Orion was on too high of a dose of prednisone that had actually put her into a comatose state. He really worked well with me and explained no matter what education he had, I would become the expert in my daughter's care, and he would always listen to my thoughts as how we would proceed with her treatment, goals, everything. Dr. L gave me a gift of feeling like I had regained some type of control. And he respected me for not just agreeing with the past specialist. Some doctors don't. They just want you to go along with whatever they say, and if they find out you're argumentative or have too many questions, they don't want to deal with you. Those aren't the ones you want to be involved with. And if they're going to patronize you, just get rid of them now. Don't deal with it. There can be a million resources, and 99% of them may be broken. So we have to identify the ones that are working. And then we have to tell other people, this is the one that works. So we can avoid the other ones and have others avoid the other ones. That's why why I'm talking about all this, because it's that important to have somebody who understands, who really understands and knows how to communicate and work with people. He helped me to understand that I was going to need to not just be a part of Orion's medical team, but the leader in her care, not a bystander, which meant I would need to educate myself, which needs to happen for all parents, all caregivers. We have to actually understand what the diagnosis is and how we can best support them in every single way. It was a lot. Being 20, you know, it was a lot to handle. I was scared. At times I still am, but I choose to trust and believe that no matter what, you know, whether it's her, my other children, or there's always going to be a lesson in everything we're given, and lessons are gifts. By Christmas, we started to see signs of a happy girl returning, but still very ill and not moving. 1 year old, not standing, not walking, not even attempting to crawl. Orion would just sit every day in my arms, unable to even turn her head to look into the loving eyes of her mommy. But she did take the world in with those eyes that held the universe. She did listen to every word spoken. She took it all in, every piece she was able. Which is where she gets her superpowers. Because the body balances itself out in one way or another. I was now in my final trimester of my pregnancy. It was also now when I realized there were still demons looming over ST's head. One of ST's friends took him out to celebrate New Year's. I became upset upon his arrival after 2 a.m. and intoxicated. His friend clumsily made his way upstairs to the restroom as I quietly laid into ST about his drinking and the time. ST became upset extremely quickly, so much so he pushed me so hard I flipped over the couch and landed on the floor next to Orion's crib. He then took off with his buddy and didn't return until the following afternoon. The father had just gotten out of the rehab nursing home. He and the mother had just left the night prior to go on a visit to the grandmother in Wisconsin. I called them earlier in the morning crying and explaining what ST had done. Basically, the father said I was now an adult and needed to handle my own affairs, which wasn't uncommon. Yeah. 5 days later, I started having cramps, but I was more than a month away from my due date. When I got to the hospital, they told me I was indeed in labor. Remembering all the pain I was in with Orion, I said I wanted an epidural immediately. I wasn't about to go through that kind of hell again, needlessly. The nurse checked me to see how far I had progressed. Then she turned to me with a big smile on her face and said, "Sorry, honey, the only thing you're getting is a baby." Yeah, I remember that. I was not very happy. I doubt there was one person on the floor who didn't hear my screams of fear that flowed like a river of F-bombs. I literally thought I was going to die. with the mother on one side of me and ST's mother on the other. They assured me I could do it. PM, ST's mother, rubbed my back in a circular motion, helping to focus my attention and energy. And honestly, that was like the only thing I think that got me through it. I just like kept going around with her hand, like, yes, thank you for whatever this is doing to me. It's definitely helping. I wouldn't let her stop. We had a full room with ST's two sisters, MC, and my friend Ella from Wisconsin filming, and of course, ST. When I found out I couldn't have any drugs, I was bound and determined to get this little baby out as fast as I could. So when the nurse told me to push for the first time, I used every ounce of strength I had. The doctor never even made it into the room in time. He was out in less than 10 minutes. Stephen Lloyd Terzich. I think that's fine anyway, whatever. Stephen Lloyd Jr., 6 pounds, 5 ounces, black and blue from head to toe from his quick arrival. I mean, if you look back, you can find my old last name, so it's not going to be a secret. This time, the nurse didn't lay my baby on my belly, but immediately whisked him away to be cleaned up and weighed. Almost everyone held him in the room before he was finally placed into my loving arms. Yeah, I really wish I could, like, I hope this makes an impact into the fact that all mothers should be able to hold their babies first, because, I mean, it is like that bond is that important, and I'm sorry, fathers. Yours is as well. You should be second. I actually felt like the moment was stolen away from me that day. Not just me. From him. I'm going to say from Stephen. And me that day. And remember so vividly every January 5th. Even if the time that had passed was a mere 15-20 minutes of longing I felt to look into my baby's eyes for the first time, it cut to the core so deeply that even today when he leaves me, a cloud of despair and longing for him settles somewhere in my heart where no one else sees. Well, this was a while ago when I wrote this. I mean, I have gotten rid of attachment disorder, so, you know, I'm very proud of him, and, like, when I get to see him, I'm so grateful, and I always tell him, he knows it, so all my kids know that. However, when I was finally able to look into his magnificent bright blue eyes, there it was again, the universe, right there in his eyes. After our release from the hospital a couple of days later, we were headed back to the parents' basement. I soon learned little Stephen would not be the same smiling, sleeping through the night little baby Orion once was. He was colicky from the moment we stepped through the dark, damp, musty-smelling doorway. It was everything I could do to hang on to my patients with 2 unconsolable little ones to take care of. Since Stephen was preemie, his stomach was much smaller and unable to hold much food at one time. He had to nurse every hour or two for only 10 to 15 minutes. Yeah, it was driving me crazy. And he also, like, Orion would be able to sleep in my bed, so I could just, like, roll over and nurse her whenever. But she slept through the night. But Stephen never was able to sleep with me. He was like, he'd end up sideways and just would not be able to sleep in the same bed as me. So it was, he had to go sleep in his crib, and Orion would sleep next to me still. But he was just a lot more difficult of a baby to take care of when he was an infant, just because he was a preemie. So preemies are harder, more demanding, not harder. And I had 2 kids now that were only like, you know, a tiny bit over a year apart, like 2 weeks over a year apart, basically. So, yeah, it was quite stressful on me as a younger mother, and without the help of father in the ways that, or support that I needed. So, my family living above us were completely inconsiderate of the fact that we had 2 babies downstairs, constant screaming at one another, doors slamming at hours of the day and night, people coming and going, using the stairway that went through our living room/bedroom, with the smack of the screen door each time someone arrived or departed. The garage door going up and down about 50 times a day was enough to make a new mother want to start ripping her own hair from her head. I was constantly on ST to try to either get a new job that paid better or to work more hours so we could get the hell out of there. He was far from interested in doing little more besides acquiring funds to go drinking. Now, with all the added stress at home, he was quickly increasing his intake. I decided I needed to take matters into my own hands and get a job. If I left it up to ST, we would never leave the parents' basement. I went back to the temp agency I had worked for just prior to the accident. I explained my daughter's new medical needs, that she might have many unexpected lengthy stays in the hospital, and I would need to be with her. They assured me it wouldn't be a problem. I also had just gotten my taxes back and decided we needed to find a new place to live now. We looked at renting apartments, even caretaking for rental homes, which would have worked out perfectly, like I did in the past, you know. I could be there with the kids and then like caretake, whatever. But with ST's DUIs and the arrest record, nobody wanted us. The more we looked, the angrier I became, knowing that ST was to blame for us having to continue living at the parents. Yeah. I kept on looking and saving up my money for when we would finally get out on our own. Finally, I found a place I could actually buy, but it was a manufactured home. AKA a trailer. It would only have my name on it because ST's credit score. Thank God we weren't married yet. The parents thought it was great. The father kept saying over and over, "Well, honey, you've come full circle in your life. We brought you home to a trailer when you were born, and now here you are again." Like that was something to be proud of. The pinnacle of my life. My very own trailer. Either way, at least we didn't have to live in the crazy house anymore, and we could make one all of our own. The end. Or the beginning, however you want to look at it, I suppose, since the second book will be coming out in August. It's almost finished, so well, we'll see if it's going to be coming out in August, depending on the publisher we find for this one. I don't know, like, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen from here till then. I'm like, I can't predict the future, even though I can at times. But, I mean, I see good things happening. I see a lot of people who need the support and the knowledge and wisdom that I bring from my own journey, and the more that we can share this side of the first book, the better. So we'll see how it all works out and plays out, but I'm glad that I did it this way, where we could go through and have the coloring cleanse or the commentary, and really help me to like dive deep into each segment of what was written in the book, because for me it was like a lot of times I actually did have, obviously I had more to say, so I didn't want the book to be 1,000 pages long though, obviously. So thank you all for sticking by and hearing, how it's maybe affected me, or how it affected Lonnie throughout her life, some of these situations, and how it's also affected me today, or my children, and others as well, especially this chapter, and knowing all of our friends today that have diseases such as arthritis or disabilities, and really how we all need to come together to support them, and not only disabilities that you can see physically, but challenges throughout our lives, even if that was our histories and environments, experiences that have caused some challenges. So we can all, give each other a little bit of a break and some support. Support in each one of us finding our own radical self-love. That's what's most important. So the love can flow out, flow out like a waterfall. Love, love, love. Thank you all so much for going on this journey again. Here's our last and final. Yes, she is outlined in pink for Divinity. I know it's white, iridescent light. I kind of like to think of pink as kind of like having all the colors within it for some reason. I don't know exactly why, but yeah. This was the final chapter. So I honor you. Thank you all so much for this beautiful gift you've given me and others of support and healing. Oneness. Oneness always. Until next time. Well, we're still doing our meditations, so yeah. See you then.